Mama.
Okay. All right.
I started in 2006.
Okay, so 2006. What got you into doing loans?
My brother was a builder at the time, like everyone else was, and he knew I was smart with numbers and thought I should try it out. So I did, and I had a knack for it.
Okay.
I started out processing, and then I became a loan officer in 2012, and the rest is history. I brought my husband over at that time to work with me, and
Okay, and what were you doing, Brandon?
I was doing sales.
Oh, am I not on? Oh, now I'm on. Okay.
She is.
Oh, now I can hear myself a lot
Whoa.
better than I could.
Okay, so-
that's way better.
So for everyone who is working on a new one of these boards, you guys can't quite see it, but there's 100 buttons right here. And if you don't turn Becky's on, then no one can hear Becky. See, Becky has a booming voice, so I could hear her. But so we're gonna go back and talk about that again just for a second. So when did
Okay.
you get in? When did you get in?
So I started in the industry in 2006.
Okay.
My brother was a builder. I was only 22 at the time, and he knew I had a knack with numbers, and so I went and got my license and got hired at a company and started working.
Awesome. And so did you work for your brother for a while?
I didn't. I worked for a mortgage company, and that was during kind of the boom and the crash. So his company actually went out of business. So I didn't do much business with them afterward, obviously.
Okay.
But yeah, so I started processing loans at the time so I could learn a little bit more about the entire industry. So it helped me gain a really good background about what the loan goes through.
And how did you get Brandon to come over? What were you doing at the time?
She doesn't ever like this story, but I like it. She basically said, "Hey, I make more money than you. Will you come work for me?" And the rest is history.
Will you come market for me instead of the other company you're working for?
Okay, fair enough. So, and how long ago was that?
That was in the end of 2012. We'd been married for like 9 months at the time.
So that was a risky deal. Hey, we're newlyweds. Let's
Yeah,
work together.
we were really going to
start a
test
team,
our marriage there.
make a jump, not have any salaries, goes 100% commission.
Okay. Well, so you're still married, right?
I think so.
Loosely.
Oh my gosh, not loosely.
You guys have how many
Sounds
kids?
bad. We have 2 children.
2 kids. Awesome.
Yes.
And how old?
6 and
7
months.
and a
6
brand new
years
baby.
and 7 months, yes.
Awesome. Okay. So let's get in. Let's talk about the market. What is let's take a 30,000 viewpoint right now. What's going on with the market outside of just St. George nationally?
Well, I actually had a good lesson learned the other day. So Becky wrote an article for St. George News in which she talked about how it is a great time to buy. And it's funny how the St. George News articles on Facebook, it's mostly haters on there. Mostly like, you don't know, or everything's so expensive. And it was just a lot of negativity. But what I didn't do in the article was give people history, give them some institutional knowledge of where do we stack up from 2006 versus now.
Okay. And that's what I want to hear about.
Yeah. So something kind of funny that most people don't realize is in 2006, one of the biggest indicators was all the ninja loans going on. Ninja loans were the ones where if you can have no income, no job or assets, you still got a mortgage. And if you could take a breath, you got a mortgage.
Okay.
So the average loan amount in 2006 was well over $300,000 in Washington County.
Okay.
As of today, how many years later? 14 years later, what's the average loan amount in Washington County, Becky? About $230,000?
I think 230 to 260, somewhere in there.
We still are not even close back to the loan amounts that we had at the time and even the average prices.
Why are we so much lower?
Because the government swung the pendulum. What that means is during the Bill Clinton days, they came out with a bunch of laws of like, everybody deserves a home. You deserve a home. Well, what happened is you got really loose guidelines, and that caused some major issues.
Okay.
Well, 2009, after the price drops, they put in a bunch of rules of you have to be a perfect borrower to get a loan. Well, the pendulum went from super loose to super tight. Now it's back in the middle of like, hey, you can have issues on your credit, you can have things, but you do need to be able to afford this home.
Okay. So
so it's keeping prices in line. We're not doing loans that are irresponsible or crazy like 2006.
Okay, so we're just pulling in Facebook Live here. It took a few minutes to get it up. We've got Brandon and Becky Staples on here. We're talking about the 30,000 view of what's going on in the market. Brandon just said that the government gave way too loose of restrictions back in 2006. Everybody could get it.
In the late 90s, Bill Clinton put in a bunch of rules saying
older.
anybody can get a loan.
That was before Brandon was born.
I had a lot more hair.
He has a baby face. So, and then they tighten them all up, and now we're kind of in the middle. So would you say right now this is a good time then?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's an excellent time. Not only are guidelines not necessarily loosening, but they're more reasonable. That if you have a decent amount of income and credit and all of that, you can get a loan. There's even some additional stated income type loans coming in, as well as rates are historically low. Still,
that's the math
That's the
behind
biggest
it.
thing.
A lot of people will say, "Well, prices are high, but they don't." But the math behind it is rates right now are below 4%. We're not allowed to quote an exact rate without doing a bunch of legal disclosures, but we're able to say roughly rates are at less than 4%.
Okay.
And during the average interest rate from 1971 through current is over 8%. So people might have bought a house for $200,000 in the late 80s or in the mid 90s, but they were paying rates double or
10
triple.
or 12%.
Yeah, double, triple, quadruple what we're paying now. So their payments were the same as we're paying on a house that costs twice as much or 3 times as much. So that's the numerical, the logic behind why we think it's a good time to buy still, because rates have kept your payments so low. If rates were to jump to 6 or 7%, you would see the prices drop immediately.
So are the rates going to stay the same? I get asked that by people all the time. Well, why don't I just wait and the rates are going to go back down to 3% or 2? I had some guy say, well, I got it for 2.75%.
Right.
Is that going to happen?
That is a guessing game, meaning rates are emotional. Sometimes we'll see bad news, China did this, or problems with Iran, and
Or
then
a
the
bomb
next
exploded here or wherever.
and the next day we'll see a reflection in interest rates, because it all trickles down from emotion and how people buy bonds and where they flee to save things, and rates go down to that. So predicting is pretty tough.
Okay.
But the Fed chair, the guy that helps run rates, said we should probably start getting used to low rates for the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay. So if you're predicting lower rates, then that's for so many people. They're saying, well, we're either going to have a crash or we're going to have rates go back up. Do you think if rates go back up, we'll slow way down?
I definitely think it would put a burden on the market, because if your payment on a $300,000 house all of a sudden went up $500 a month because rates went up, that would take a lot of people out of the market.
Okay.
Until prices adjusted down to match the increased rates.
People are so used to these rates, though. Like most of the people I'm meeting with are don't even realize rates just even 10, 15 years ago were at 6 and 7%. That seems crazy to them. So it's almost like the mindset of America has changed.
Spoiled.
We're really spoiled. Where we expect it to be 3 and 4%, and we're mad if we hear 5%.
For a minute, rates went up a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago
And
they were in
people,
the
when they
high
heard,
4s and 5s.
It was like, oh my gosh, you're gouging me. And we got shopped way harder than we normally do when people say, oh, they're below 4. Because it's this mental thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then do you think that we're going to slow down or have a crash at all then?
We don't operate that way. And what I mean by that is my wife and I don't focus on fear. We focus on what we can control. And what we can control is do good work, provide value for people. And we work with agents that say, I'm going to price this house correctly, and I'm going to take care of my clients. And we don't really focus on that. And I know that sounds ignorant or as if we're living in
In a bubble.
a bubble, but I just can't control it, so I don't worry about it. Do I think that the market works in ebbs and flows, and we're due for an ebb? Yes. I think that the market will slow down eventually, and I think that it will not be as bad as 2006 through 2009 in the housing market. The stock market might take a dive. This other thing might take a dive. We might go to a war. But the housing market is not so inflated, so ridiculous like last time. I just don't know how it can take such a dive.
It's also just not so dependent upon bad mortgages this time.
Okay.
Where
The loans
there's
we're
not
doing are
mortgages.
solid.
Yeah.
Good borrowers that have done everything they can to get a home.
Well, and so you talked a little bit about how guidelines are opening up. They're making it a little bit easier for people. Give somebody, a listener on here, give them an idea of where you need to be kind of so that you guys can either coach them, say, hey, you need to get your score from here to here or do this. Give me just an idea or give them an idea.
Mortgage runs on the rule of twos. They want to see how you've done the last 2 years in your job.
Okay.
You've had a job. Doesn't mean you have had the same job for the last 2 years, but you need to have been employed for the last couple of years. They want to look at a couple months' bank statements and a couple of pay stubs and a couple of tax returns.
Okay.
So the rule of two is what you think of is if I've got a couple tax returns and it shows I made money, had a job for the last 2 years, I can come up with a couple of bank statements and a couple of pay stubs, and my credit score is over 580 to 620. I have a good likelihood of getting a loan.
Did you guys see Becky's face when he said that?
Well, no, yeah, 580 to
caveats.
620 would be the
580 is the
lowest.
bottom.
Yeah, and I say 580, you're not going to get an excellent credit or interest rate at 580, but it's possible to still get a loan at 580.
Okay.
Ideally, I would shoot for anything above 660. You're going to have reasonable rates, 640 to 660 for FHA, and then if you want to go conventional, you need to be a minimum of 620. But in the 700s, you're going to get better rates for sure.
Okay, and I say that because I know Brandon and Becky, and Becky's the anchor on the ground with the balloon, and Brandon's up there he's the balloon, and I'm the same way with my wife.
Absolutely, my job is to be optimistic, to bring stuff in, and it's her job to make it happen, and it's a good balance.
And have you ever here's a good question. Have you ever promised anything that she couldn't deliver on?
Oh man.
That happened in the beginning.
That happened in the beginning until I'm not allowed to swear until she kicked my butt.
Okay.
So in the beginning, it was like, you're really hungry and trying to get deals and trying to feed your family. Like, come on in, let's get you a loan. And then I learned, I can't promise stuff that my wife can't back up or that causes issues. So that was a learning lesson the first couple months.
Okay, awesome. And here's a question that I'm always curious when people are in the industry. Do you guys invest right now in the industry? Are you currently buying, selling, investing? What do you guys do personally?
In the last 2 years, we've sold 8 to 10 residential investments of ours and rolled them into bigger investments.
Okay,
meaning we're still actively buying. We closed a building in November, took all the money from those rentals, bought a $1 million building. We're still going. We're under contract on 2 currently.
I think what happens is the community looks at lenders as, quote, all they want to do is just push off loans. But since you guys are in the trenches with everyone else, it's easier to look at you and say, okay, hey, give me a quote on this, or let me know what you're actually thinking about this. Okay, so let's break it down pretty easy for somebody who it's their first time buying. They don't know the difference between an FHA, a VA. They're like, oh my gosh, can I even do anything? Becky, can you give me just a quick breakdown of the difference of an FHA, a VA, those type of things?
Yeah, and usually the place I start with people is most people are focused on what's my down payment? Like how much money do I have to bring to the table? So if they're wanting to stick with a 0 down loan, then I focus on the few 0 down loan options that there are. We've got Utah Housing, we've got rural housing, we've got VA if you are a veteran and if you have experience that way. Or if they have 3% down, they can do a conventional loan. If they have 3.5% down, they can do an FHA loan. So that's the biggest place where I start to kind of guide people depending on what their down payment needs are. The main difference between FHA and conventional are a lot of people think FHA is a first-time homebuyer loan only because of the word FHA. It's actually federal housing is what FH stands for. So with that, FHA is a little more lenient on credit scores.
Okay.
So if you have a 580 credit score, if you have a 620 credit score, you're going to get a way better interest rate on an FHA loan versus a conventional loan.
Okay.
If you have excellent credit, you're in the 760 range, you have anywhere from 3 to 5% to put down, then conventional would probably be a better bet for you. But the good news is you don't have to know that as the consumer. You can trust professionals. You can come in. You can have the conversation. You make sure you ask a lot of questions. Make sure you have them lay out all the loan programs and look at and run a few different options for you. What would my payment be on an FHA loan? What would my payment be on a conventional loan? And then you can make a very decisive answer that way because the numbers tell it all.
Okay. And you guys are open to doing that. It doesn't cost to call someone and say, hey, can you help me with this?
Correct.
No, we feel like the best way to take care of people is just to serve them, give. We don't charge for a consultation. It's like, come in, we'll meet with you, give you advice, and put our consultant hat on. Here's what we would do if we were you. And then if they choose to go forward, great. If they don't, we say, we love you whether you buy now or in 2 years.
Okay. And are you guys located more than just in southern Utah? Tell me a little bit about Sun American.
We have grown from a little tiny team of 2, my wife and I, and our assistant, to we now have offices open in Richfield. We opened an office in Cedar City today.
Congratulations.
Today, yes. And opening another one in St. George in March.
Wow. Okay.
And then in Arizona as well.
Okay. So you guys do loans here and in Arizona.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Awesome. Now, to flip it on a little bit of the personal side, a couple months ago, I saw Becky getting an award for being a rock star as a lender. Brandon, can you emphasize or can you explain that? Because I know she won't if I asked her about this.
No.
She's like, I got an award.
Let's embarrass her together.
I want to know how big of a player she really is.
Yeah.
For here in St.
It's all
George.
because of my team and because of Brandon.
What kind of player? Because,
A player?
we did kiss on the first date.
A player's going to play? Oh my gosh.
But give us an idea of what people can do right here in St. George.
So there's a magazine called Scotsman's Guide that lenders use to know what's new in the market, what's this, what's that, what are rankings. Last year in Scotsman's Guide, she was ranked in the top 200 loan officers in the United States.
Wow.
By volume here in Little St. George.
There's a lot of
And then-
business in St. George.
And then in the top 75 women loan officers in the U.S.
Okay. Then how many? Do you have an idea of how many loan officers there are? I mean, there's like 50 states, so there's like 100 loan officers.
There's several.
Probably.
There's like 4,000 or 5,000 in Utah alone. So times that by 50 states.
Whoa. Okay, so there's a lot of loan officers.
Yeah.
Tons and tons. Okay. No, that's awesome. Okay, so on a flip side here, back to personal, or I should say keep going more personal. I like to hear my guess of what kind of books you're reading. Why are you reading them?
That's the good stuff. That's what I wanted to talk about today.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. Actually, about 4.5 before we start hearing the music that I gotta cut out. Give me an idea. Best book you read this last year, 19.
I would say best thing I listened to.
Oh,
Because I
listen.
tend to
Okay.
listen to them. And this is one we've listened to so many times I haven't memorized. It's called
The Strangest Secret.
From Earl Nightingale. And it was recorded in the 1950s. And when you listen to it, you can still hear like the record, and it says to turn it over.
It's not The Secret. It's a
It's
different
not The
thing from
Secret.
that.
No.
Is it?
Go on Audible, get The Strangest Secret from Earl Nightingale. It's an old man who talks like this. And
Sounds good.
And in that, he talks about, in this life, if you were to take 100 people in the United States, the most opportune nation that has ever existed, we live in the most opportune time that's ever been had. Only 5% of people, 5 out of 100, really end up being successful. And he talks about the difference between those who do and don't. And we've just eaten that up. It's mostly about attitude, goal setting, and then he shares what is the strangest secret on why those 5% are so successful.
And I think the biggest thing is we live in America where anyone has that opportunity. And that's what's so cool about it is go grab it if you want it. Right?
That's awesome. Thank you. Now, Becky, what's yours?
My favorite book that's probably kind of stuck with me for a few years is The Miracle Morning.
Yes.
By Hal Elrod.
Payton, tell us about The Miracle Morning, my friend.
It's a favorite, right?
No, I want to hear your take because that changed my life 18 months ago.
Yeah, so I found him back in about 2012, and I haven't been like a 5 a.m. riser since, but I've had my off and ons. But I finally went to his live event in December, and I feel like it's just lit me on
She
fire
met Hal,
ever since.
Payton.
You met him?
I met Hal Elrod,
Signed
right?
her book.
So cool. I'm jealous.
Right? It was a really great conference, and it really just made me want more, you know?
But what's the premise behind it? Share with someone who has never heard of The Miracle Morning. What is it?
Well, hey, He's trying to take over my radio show here, and
Got to give people some background there, Peyton.
and he's really really good at it. Well, fine. If you're going to say that really quickly, I was sitting in a real estate conference about 18 months ago, and the guy presenting said, "You got to read this book, The Miracle Morning." And I read it, and that day maybe it's more than 18 months ago, because I wrote in my journal every single day for over 500 days straight, and I messed up and I missed a day or two, and I was so mad at myself. I'm like, no! And now I'm okay because I don't track how many days that I've been doing it. But maybe it's been almost 2 years.
Awesome.
Because I'm around the 600-day mark.
Time do you get up?
But around 5:15.
Time do you get up, Becky?
Lately, 5 a.m.
Oh man, I'm sleeping in. I'm slacking.
I know, slacking, right?
But
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's the way that you start your morning each and every day. Whether you do affirmations, you meditate, you do the same things over and over to really get you pumped up for the day. And we've got 2 minutes left, but tell me what you do for your morning ritual.
So start out with, well, his whole concept is the savers. So I try to do them in order just because I'm a by the book kind of girl.
Okay.
But I don't do all of them, admittedly. I usually do some type of meditation, which is the silence part of savers, and affirmations and exercise, and then my reading is in the form of books of I listen while I'm either driving or working out or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's literally changed my life.
Yeah, that's great.
I
right?
wouldn't be getting to do this radio show with super awesome people if it wasn't for that book. I attribute a ton of my life and my success to that book.
That's awesome.
I'm actually I get to go speak to a youth group about that book and about affirmations and all that on Tuesday. So I'm super excited about that.
Cool. That's
so
great.
You guys have about 45 seconds. Tell me one thing that's going to change someone's life right now.
Give.
He's
so good one. He is so
Dang
good.
it.
That's why I
Okay,
married
here's
him.
the thing. You give what you get. Go around, look to serve others, and it will come back to you. Not that you're expecting it to come back, but just go look to do good things everywhere you go, and you'll be surprised how happy you are.
Have you read The Go-Giver?
Yes, you have.
Yes.
On Audible. If you haven't read it, I have it on our Audible.
I-
I've
Mama
read
has.
it.
I
I
have
love
not.
how she
I
says
think
that.
he has read it.
Because that's the whole
He's
premise.
listened to it, yeah.
That's the premise of that book is give with no expectations.
Expectations.
Expectations. I got to say my words correctly here. But give, but truly with nothing. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you. Mondays at 3:30. We'll be here every single Monday this entire year. Thank you so much. Radio St. George 100.3.
Tell them you love them, Peyton.
Love you guys. You're all awesome. Keep being amazing. Brandon makes me get out of my comfort zone every day. Thank you guys. We'll see you later. Woohoo!
Are we still live on Facebook?
We're still live on Facebook.
Oh.
Oh, yes. Okay. Wave to the camera.
No dirty jokes.
No dirty. We're all done with those.